We're asking an age-old question and trying to answer it. How did we become sentient? How did human beings, approximately 12,000 or so years ago, as our history tells us, leave our caves at the end of the last ice age and the beginning of this latest warming period called the Holocene, which is what we're in now, and develop agriculture, language, math, or as the British like to say, maths, which I think is a better term. I kind of like that. I might start using maths. No, I'm not trying to sound smart. How did that happen? Well, I think before we delve into it, we should have a little bit of history. And the first part of history I want to share with you will answer one of the questions that those of you that have been watching my little videos might be asking is, what's up with the little skulls next here? You trying to be spooky? No, not at all. And I'll explain that in a moment. So here's the question. How did we get this idea that we went from big thug cavemen, you know, what was the old picture of carrying the wife around by the hair and you got a club and these big brutes that look more like apes than humans. How did that come to be? Well, I'll tell you. First off, it's not true. And second, there is a good reason how that happened. Back in 1908 or so, we uncovered for the first time another species of human. So up until that point, the fossils that we had found had been of me and you, and we are Homo sapiens, okay? So all of us were Homo sapiens. And here is a skull of a Homo sapien, all right? Just like me. And this is a modern man. But in 1908, in a part of France, the Dordogne Valley, I believe it is, archaeologists discovered something different, a Neanderthal. And they, of course, at the time, didn't quite know what to make of it, because up until that point, the idea that there were different humans and an evolving number of humans was sort of unknown. And I believe it was called the Chappelle man, was a Neanderthal. And Neanderthals, a little bit of history, Neanderthals we now know started out around 400,000 years ago. And a man named Marcel Boulay took that skeleton and imagined through art what the Neanderthal would look like. And what he pictured him is this hairy beast hunched over, opposing toes. I mean, this was as close to an ape as you can get. Now, we don't know why he fabricated some of that. We do know some facts. We know that the Neanderthal he found was an aging man that was severely arthritic and hunched over, and that's partly how this came to be. But that's not important to our story. Whatever happened, Marcel Boulay popularized the idea of this caveman-looking creature, which was inaccurate, but it stuck. And now everybody thinks, oh, caveman looks like that. That's where that came from. And so much of our history is based on things that never really happened. And you have to sort of suss those things out. But I want to show you something. 400,000 years ago, Neanderthals first came on the scene, and they had a good long run. The last Neanderthal was about 40,000 years ago. So let's say they had 350, 360,000 years a run. Now, that's not much compared to the dinosaurs, who had 150 million years, like 1,000 times longer. But for human beings, Neanderthals had a pretty good run. As an example, Homo sapiens, you and me, we've been around about 120,000 years, much more recent. But I want to show you something. This is an actual casting. I mean, it's plastic, but this is the La Chapelle man, and this is the actual casting off the actual Neanderthal skull. And take a look at something. I think you're going to find this, I think you're going to find this interesting. Look at the difference here. Notice how much bigger the Neanderthal skull is? Look at that. The cranium, or the cranial cavity up here of a modern person, of a Homo sapien, is much smaller. And what does that mean? That means that Homo sapiens had much smaller brains, and still have, than Neanderthals. Neanderthals had much larger brains. They have existed quite a bit longer and were more successful. They had, to the best we can tell, language, communication, art. They certainly had rituals. They buried their dead. These were not stupid people. Neanderthals have gotten a bad rap over history. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And I don't want these videos to be too long, but we're going to delve a little bit deeper into this to find out some of the answers as to why and how we became sentient. Stay tuned. I'll be with you in a minute.